this sort of research comes from a book called The Fourth Turning. It's become really famous in the last sort of year or two because of COVID. But this book really changed the way all of us looked at sort of cycles that we're living in as humanity. The two guys who brought this book out, William Strauss and Neil Howe, you don't know their names, but you've used their language thousands of times in your life. In 1986, they brought out a book called Generations. And in it, what they did is they explained and described and introduced us to baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, different motivating factors, different ideas around success, around generations. This was brand new for us. We hadn't really thought about things in this way, changed the consumer landscape. And these two gentlemen became really famous for that work. 10 years later, they brought this book out called The Fourth Turning. Based on that sort of research, they also realized that humanity is going through these 80-year cycles they called cyclums. And these cyclums are these approximately 80-year cycles that happen and have been happening for hundreds of years. And the last time an 80-year cycle ended was 1946 with World War II. And the 20 years leading up to the end of a cycle is always got the same characteristics. It always has financial demise or implosion, social unrest, a political divide, and war. The same characters show up every 80 years. 80 years ago was Mussolini and Hitler. Today it's Putin and Trump. And it's always these 80-year cycles where the older generation wants to keep the old world alive and not allow the new world to come. This is what the war is about. This is what most wars are about. And so let me take you through this 80-year cycle to give you an understanding of where we are in this 80-year cycle, how long there is to go, and what it means for what work looks like over this next period of time. So what they say is inside this 80-year cycle, the cyclum, what we have is we have these sort of rhythms or seasons. And within these 80-year cycles, we have these 20-year seasons. We have the high, spring, awakening, summer, unraveling, autumn, and crisis, winter. And what they explain in the book is that they're not going to make any predictions about what's going to happen in the future. They're just going to tell us what happened in the last 80-year cycle and what happened in the last 80-year cycle. And so they said that if we got our research correct, at 2008, we should begin the crisis and we should start with a financial crisis. And in 2008, happened exactly like they wrote about, and the book became a massive bestseller in 2008 because of what they had actually spoken about. But like they said, there was no predictions. But let me take you through the 80-year cycle and show you exactly what is happening over the last 80 years and where we are with it. So the first sort of spring from 1946 to 1964, we have this newness, this sort of excitement without war and brand new sort of momentum in the world. And we had so many new things introduced to the world. We had the space program, we had United Nations, the dollar became the global exchange, we had jets being introduced to the world, and we had, that's the wrong slide. We had jets being introduced to the world, and we had TVs being introduced to the world. So we had so much newness happen over this period of time. But every spring is followed by summer, and we move into an awakening. And I use Woodstock as an example because this is the first time we started using psychedelics. And back then, it was seen as a hippy-dippy kind of thing, and by some people it still is. But today, Johns Hopkins University, Harvard, Stanford are all showing us that it's really an awakening to who we are, healing PTSD and many mental illnesses. And this really awakening to it was catalyzed by this process of Woodstock, which happened to many different Woodstocks around the world. Also, we had the introduction of computers and technology over this period of time, helping us awaken to new ways of communicating and new ways of doing business. And my favorite one over this period of time was the introduction of Star Wars to humanity. And the reason I think this is great is that think about the first time you watched Star Wars. What happened to your imagination? What happened to the possibilities of your thinking of what could be out there? I mean, I was a little child and I was just blown away by the possibility and awakening to the possibility of who we were. And over the next few years, we'll have definite alien interaction. We can see how CNN's prepping us, Pentagon's prepping us, Israeli Defense Force prepping us, everybody's prepping us. And so this media sort of landscape is changing to get us sort of ready for this next engagement, which I think AI is part of, but that's a whole other talk. And then we get the unraveling. And the unraveling is autumn, when the leaves start falling off the trees. And in 1984 to 2008, we had this unraveling start to happen. We had the Berlin Wall come down and the beginning of sort of the end of communism as we understood it back then. We had Tiananmen Square happen over this period of time where the stronghold of China released. and allowed a new form of China to be birthed. We had the Exxon Valdez happen over this period of time, which catalyzed business at all costs. Catalyzed the green movement and shut down business at all costs. So ESG, environmental sustainability, all catalyzed by this very, very terrible incident, the Exxon Valdez, over this unraveling. And for the ladies in the room, you'll like me to know that the feminist movement picked up momentum over this period of time and the patriarchy started to unravel. I see some smirks in the audience. I'm not going to look at who they are. And then we arrive at crisis. And crisis is when winter arrives, where everything starts to die of the old season. And from 2008 to 2028, we are now in this fully fledged crisis that happens every 80 years. As they explain in their book, financial crisis kicks it off. We then move on to nationalism, political divide, Mussolini and Hitler, today Le Pen, Trump, and all the rest of them. All of it based on exactly the same theory. We don't understand the future. We're fearful of it. Shut everybody out that doesn't look like us. Let's just protect ourselves in a very deep survival mode that's happening. Also, massive unemployment around the world. That's why I don't think for us to get prepared for jobs is the right thing to do. There's a whole other range of things that we could be doing moving forward. And then up until about a year and a half ago, I thought COVID-19 was the war they spoke about in the book because it was 6 million people that died. There was an invisible enemy that we were fighting, but then this Muppet woke up and started all of his stuff up in Russia and Ukraine. And now we have many wars happening. Oil wars, currency wars, technological wars, transistor wars, resource wars. There's like a whole range of things that are happening that are shutting down the old world as we understood it.